The letter was taped to my door like a public shaming. The HOA's red stamp screaming violation in block letters that could have woken the dead. My kids, two scrappy boys who'd rather skin their knees than sit still, were now $2,600 in debt to a woman named Karen who ruled our cul-de-sac like a dictator with a clipboard. It was absurd fining kids for leaving their bikes on the lawn, as if their Schwinns were a blight on her perfect vision of suburban utopia. But this wasn't just about bikes. It was about power, control, and a neighborhood on the edge of revolt. Karen, the HOA president, was the kind of woman who ironed her yoga pants and measured her lawn with a ruler. She'd moved into Willow Creek 3 years ago, and since then, our quiet community had become her personal fiefdom. No mailbox was too shiny, no hedge too trimmed for her approval. But this time, she'd gone too far. My boys, Jamie and Ethan, were 10 and 12, the kind of kids who built ramps out of scrap wood and raced until the streetlights flickered on. Their bikes, battered and beloved, were their freedom. Karen's fine claimed they'd defaced community aesthetics by leaving them out overnight. $2,000 for aesthetics? I'd have laughed if I wasn't so furious. I wasn't alone in my rage. Across the street, Maria's flower beds had been deemed non-compliant for mixing colors Karen didn't like. Old Mr. Thompson got a $500 fine for his rusty bird bath, which he'd had since his wife passed a decade ago. And then there was Priya, a single mom who'd been slapped with a $1,200 penalty for her son's basketball hoop. Apparently, it was too urban. Karen's reign of terror had turned Willow Creek into a pressure cooker, and the bike fine was the spark that lit the fuse. That evening, I called a meeting, not in the HOA's sterile community center, but in my garage where the kids' bikes leaned against the wall like evidence in a trial. Neighbors poured in: Maria with her arms crossed, Thompson with his cane, Priya with her teenage son trailing behind. There were others too. The Wilsons, whose dog had been reported for barking. The Nguins, fined for their holiday lights staying up past January. We were a motley crew united by one thing: Karen had to go. The air was thick with frustration as we swapped stories. Maria's voice cracked as she described Karen's smug smile when she handed her the flowerbed fine. Thompson admitted he'd been saving for a new hearing aid, but Karen's birdbath penalty had drained his account. Priya, usually soft-spoken, slammed her fist on my workbench, saying she'd had to pick up extra shifts to cover her fine. I shared my own story, the $2,600 that threatened to wipe out our savings for the boys' summer camp. The room buzzed with a shared realization. This wasn't about rules. It was about Karen flexing her power, punishing anyone who didn't fit her vision of perfection. We decided to fight back, but not with lawyers or petitions. Those were Karen's weapons, and she'd outmaneuver us with her endless paperwork. Instead, we'd hit her where it hurt, her reputation. The plan was simple but bold. We'd stage a protest, right on her pristine lawn, with every non-compliant item she'd find us for. Bikes, basketball hoops, colorful flowers. Even Thompson's birdbath. We'd turn her kingdom into a showcase of everything she hated. And we'd do it publicly, with flyers inviting the whole town to see Willow Creek's rebellion. The next Saturday, we gathered at dawn. The kids rode their bikes in circles, their laughter defiant. Maria replanted her flower beds in a riot of reds and purples, right in front of Karen's house. Thompson, with help from Priya's son, hauled his birdbath to the edge of her driveway, where it gleamed like a badge of honor. The Wilsons brought their dog, who barked joyfully, and the Nguins strung up their Christmas lights in broad daylight. By noon, half the town had shown up, snapping photos and whispering about the crazy HOA lady. Local news vans circled, sensing a story. Karen emerged from her house like a queen stepping onto a battlefield. Her face was a mask of fury, but her voice was ice cold. "This is private property," she snapped, waving a stack of fine notices like a weapon. "Disperse, or I'll call the police." I stepped forward, holding Jamie's bike. "Go ahead, Karen. Call them. Let them see how you're bullying kids over toys." The crowd roared in agreement, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. The standoff lasted hours. Neighbors shouted their grievances, each story fueling the next. Maria told how Karen had mocked her accent when she'd pleaded about the flower beds. Thompson revealed Karen had threatened to evict him if he didn't pay up. Priya's son, usually shy, spoke up about how Karen's rules made him feel like an outsider in his own home. The crowd grew louder, angrier, and Karen's composure began to crack. She clutched her clipboard like a shield, but we weren't backing down. Then came the twist none of us saw coming. A man pushed through the crowd. Tom, Karen's husband, who'd always stayed in her shadow. He was a quiet guy, always mowing the lawn or nodding along at HOA meetings. But now his face was red, his voice shaking. "Enough, Karen," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You've turned our home into a prison. These are good people, and you're tearing them apart." The crowd fell silent, stunned. Tom turned to us, his eyes wet.
"I'm sorry.
"I didn't know it was this bad." Karen's mask shattered. She screamed at Tom, calling him weak, a traitor. But the damage was done. The news cameras caught every word, and by evening, the story was viral. HOA tyrant humiliated as husband takes stand. The town turned on Karen. Petitions to dissolve the HOA flooded the county office. Reporters dug into her past, uncovering a trail of complaints from other neighborhoods she'd terrorized. By Monday, her fines were under investigation, and whispers of fraud swirled. Apparently, some of that money never made it to the HOA's accounts. We thought we'd won. The fines were dropped, and Karen resigned, her house listed for sale within a week. Willow Creek felt alive again. Kids rode their bikes. Maria's flowers bloomed, and Thompson's birdbath stayed put. But victory came at a cost. Tom left Karen, moving into a small apartment across town. Their daughter, barely 16, stopped coming to school, humiliated by the public fallout. And Karen herself? She vanished, but not before leaving a final note on the community board. "You think you're heroes, but you're just a mob." It stung because, deep down, I wondered if she was right. The neighborhood was free, but the scars remained. We'd fought for our kids, our homes, our right to live without fear of a clipboard dictator. Yet, in our anger, we'd torn a family apart. Tom's betrayal, however justified, had broken something in Karen we'd never understand. And her daughter, caught in the crossfire, paid a price no fine could measure. Willow Creek was ours again, but the cost of our rebellion was a bitter pill. What would you have done in our place? Stood up to Karen's tyranny or tried to reason with her first? Where do you draw the line between justice and vengeance when a community fights back?